The note was so small I almost didn't open it until I got home. My grandson Noah had slipped it into my hand while his mother was clearing the table, his fingers trembling as he whispered, "Don't let Mom see." I thought it was something sweet, maybe drawing a child's secret, but sitting alone in my car, I unfolded it. "Grandma, please don't eat the pie, and please don't leave me here tonight." I felt my blood turn to ice, because just minutes earlier, Ashley had smiled and packed that very pie for me, and Noah had looked like he was trying not to cry. If you've ever felt something wasn't right in your own family, I want you to stay with me. Tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? And if your heart is already racing, like mine was that night, don't forget to like and subscribe. I have a feeling this story is going to stay with you. I didn't start the car right away. I just sat there in the driveway, the engine silent, my hand still wrapped around that tiny piece of paper, like it might disappear if I let go. The porch light behind me cast a warm glow across the windshield, and from the outside, everything looked so normal, so peaceful, but nothing about what I had just read felt normal. I looked down at the note again, reading it slowly this time, as if the meaning might change. "Grandma, please don't eat the pie, and please don't leave me here tonight." A chill ran through me so sharp it made my shoulders tense. I thought of Noah's face when he handed it to me, how his eyes darted toward the kitchen, how quickly he pulled his hand away, like even touching me for too long might get him in trouble. No child should look like that in their own home. I finally started the car, my movements stiff, mechanical. As I backed out of the driveway, I glanced one last time at the house. Ashley was standing at the window. She smiled and waved, and for the first time since she married my son, that smile didn't feel warm. It felt practiced. I drove home in silence, the radio off my mind, racing through every detail of the evening. At first I tried to tell myself I was overreacting. Children say strange things sometimes. They imagine danger where there is none, but Noah wasn't like that. He had always been a gentle, thoughtful boy. Even as a toddler, he had a kind of quiet awareness about him. He didn't make scenes, he didn't exaggerate, and he never, ever lied to me. By the time I pulled into my own driveway, my chest felt tight with something I couldn't quite name. Fear, maybe, or instinct. I grabbed my purse and stepped out of the car, but before I could close the door, my eyes landed on the white bakery box sitting neatly on the passenger seat. The pie. Ashley had insisted I take it. "Oh, Susan, you have to." She had said, her tone light and cheerful. "I made it just for you. You always say you love pecan pie." I remembered smiling politely even though I hadn't mentioned pecan pie in years. No, really, I couldn't. Nonsense, she had cut in already wrapping it. It'll go to waste otherwise. And Noah. He'd been watching that entire exchange, watching the pie, watching me. I reached back into the car and picked up the box. It felt heavier than it should have. Inside the house, everything was quiet. The familiar comfort of my living room wrapped around me, but it didn't soothe me the way it usually did. I set the pie down carefully on the kitchen counter as if it were something fragile or dangerous. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I opened the lid. The smell was sweet rich, exactly what you'd expect. Golden crust, glossy pecan topping, perfectly arranged. Nothing about it looked wrong, and yet Noah's words echoed in my head. "Please don't eat the pie." I closed the box slowly. "No," I whispered to myself. "Not tonight." Instead of cutting a slice like I normally would have, I walked to the refrigerator and placed the entire box on the middle shelf. I shut the door firmly, like that could somehow lock away the unease building inside me. I leaned against the counter and pressed my palms flat against the cool surface. Think, Susan. Just think. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe Noah had simply been afraid of something else, something unrelated, and the pie was just an excuse to get my attention. But then, why tell me not to leave him there? That part I couldn't ignore. I pushed myself away from the counter and walked slowly into the living room, lowering myself onto the couch. My eyes drifted to the framed photos on the mantel. Michael as a little boy grinning with a missing front tooth. Michael on his wedding day standing beside Ashley, both of them looking perfect, polished, happy. And then Noah, just last year, holding up a science project with pride shining in his eyes. I picked up that last frame. When had that brightness started to fade, I thought back carefully. At first, everything had seemed fine after Michael married Ashley. She was charming, attentive, organized, maybe a little too organized if I was being honest. But I had told myself that was just her personality. Some people liked control. It didn't make them bad. Over time, though, small things had begun to shift. Noah stopped calling me as often. When I did speak to him, Ashley was usually in the background correcting him, finishing his sentences, steering the conversation. "Oh, he's just tired," she would say. "Oh, he's been acting a little dramatic lately." And Michael, my son, who used to tell me everything, had grown distant. He always sounded exhausted, distracted. "Work's been crazy, Mom. We've just been busy. Everything's fine. Everything's fine." The words echoed now hollow and rehearsed. I set the frame back down and rubbed my temples. I wanted to believe them. God, I wanted to believe them. But that note in my hand felt heavier than anything else. I unfolded it again, smoothing out the creases. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, written quickly, probably in secret. Noah had been afraid. Not nervous, not anxious, afraid. And that wasn't something I could explain away. I stood up abruptly, my decision forming before I even fully realized it. I walked back into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and stared at the pie again. Then I closed the door. If there was even the slightest chance that Noah had been warning me about something real, I couldn't ignore it. I needed to know what was going on, but I also needed to be careful. Whatever was happening in that house, it was clear Noah didn't feel safe speaking openly, which meant if I pushed too hard too fast, I might make things worse. I took a slow breath and reached for my phone. My finger hovered over Michael's name. I could call him right now, ask him directly, demand answers. But something in my gut told me that wouldn't work. If Michael was part of this, if he knew anything at all, he might deny it. Or worse, he might warn Ashley. And if Ashley realized Noah had told me something, I felt a sharp knot tighten in my chest. No, I couldn't risk that. Instead, I scrolled down to another name. Carol, my oldest friend. My voice of reason when my thoughts started to spiral. I pressed call. She answered on the second ring. "Susan, everything okay?" I opened my mouth to respond, but for a moment no words came out. My throat felt tight. My thoughts tangled between fear and disbelief. Finally, I whispered Carol. "I think something is wrong at Michael's house." There was a pause. Then her voice softened, serious now. "Tell me what happened." I looked down at the note in my hand, my fingers tightening around it, and for the first time since I read those words, I said them out loud. "My grandson gave me this tonight," I said. "He told me not to eat the pie, and not to leave him there." Another pause, longer this time. When Carol spoke again, her voice was steady, but there was something else beneath it. Concern. "Okay," she said quietly. "We're not ignoring that, and neither was I. Not anymore." Carol didn't waste time comforting me with empty reassurances. She knew me too well for that. "Susan," she said carefully, "you've trusted your instincts your whole life. How many times have you told me you could always tell when one of your students was in trouble before they even said a word?" I let out a slow breath, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter. "More times than I can count," I admitted. "Then don't start doubting yourself now." Her words settled into me not as panic, but as clarity. I wasn't imagining this. Something was wrong. "I need to see him," I said quietly. "I need to know if he's okay." "And you will," Carol replied, "but not by marching in there and accusing anyone. If something serious is going on, you need to be smart about this." She was right. As much as every part of me wanted to drive straight back to that house and pull Noah into my arms, I knew that acting on emotion alone could close doors I might not be able to reopen. "I'll start small," I said. "Just check on him." After we hung up, I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Noah's face, those wide, fearful eyes, and heard his voice in my head. "Please don't leave me here tonight." By morning, I had already made up my mind. I picked up the phone just after 8 and called Noah's school. It felt harmless enough. Grandmothers checked in on their grandchildren all the time. When the receptionist answered, I put on my warmest, most casual tone. "Hi, this is Susan Reynolds, Noah Reynolds' grandmother. I just wanted to check if he left his sweater at school yesterday. He mentioned it to me." There was a pause as she typed. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said politely, "but Noah hasn't been in school this week." My heart skipped. "I'm sorry what he's been absent for the last 4 days. 4 days." I gripped the phone tighter. "Oh. I must have gotten my days mixed up," I said quickly, forcing a small laugh. "Thank you so much." "Of course." The line clicked dead. I stood there in my quiet kitchen, the silence pressing in around me. 4 days. Ashley had told me just last night that Noah was doing great in school, that he'd even gotten praise from his teacher. My chest tightened. Why would she lie about something so simple? I set the phone down slowly, my thoughts beginning to piece together in a way that made my stomach turn. This wasn't just about the pie. This was bigger, much bigger. I walked into the living room and sat down, my mind racing through every recent memory, searching for things I might have overlooked. And then something surfaced. Last week, I had stopped by their house in the afternoon just for a quick visit. Noah had been sitting on the couch, unusually still, his hands tucked into his sleeves. When I sat beside him, he shifted slightly, and for a brief moment his sleeve pulled back. There had been a faint mark on his wrist, not a deep bruise, not something dramatic, but enough to make me pause. "What happened there, sweetheart?" I had asked gently. Before Noah could answer, Ashley's voice cut in from the kitchen. "Oh, that playground stuff. He's been a little clumsy lately." She had laughed it off so easily. Too easily. At the time I had accepted it. Children fell. They got scrapes and bruises. But now I wasn't so sure. I stood up abruptly and reached for my keys. I needed to talk to someone face to face. 30 minutes later, I was sitting across from Carol at her kitchen table, the morning sunlight streaming through the window between us. I had brought the note, and now I handed it to her. She read it slowly, her brow furrowing deeper with each word. When she finished, she didn't speak right away. She just placed the paper gently on the table and looked at me. "Susan," she said quietly, "this isn't something a child writes for no reason." I knotted my throat tight. "I called the school," I told her. "He hasn't been there in 4 days." Carol's expression hardened. "And they told you everything was fine. Last night, Ashley said he was doing great." Carol leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "That's not a misunderstanding," she said. "That's a lie." The word hung in the air between us, a lie. Hearing it spoken out loud made it real in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. I keep thinking maybe I'm jumping to conclusions I admitted. Maybe there's an explanation. Susan Carol interrupted gently but firmly. "If there is, we'll find it. But right now you have a scared child, a lie about school, and a warning about food." She paused, letting that sink in. "You don't ignore that." I looked down at my hands, twisting them together. "What if I'm too late?" I whispered. Carol reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. "You're not," she said. "You saw it. You listened. That's already more than most people do." Her words steadied me, but the fear was still there, coiled tight in my chest. "I need to see him," I said again. "Not just hear about him. I need to look into his eyes and know what's going on." "Then you will," Carol said, "but carefully." We sat in silence for a moment, both thinking. Then Carol spoke again. "Start with something normal," she suggested. "Something they can't easily refuse without looking suspicious." "Like what?" "A visit. A small one. Bring something for Noah. Make it casual." I considered that. It made sense. If I showed up accusing them, they would shut me out immediately. But if I came as the same loving grandmother they expected, I might get a glimpse behind the curtain. "I'll go this afternoon," I said. Carol nodded. "And Susan?" I looked up. "If anything feels off, you trust that feeling. Don't let anyone talk you out of it." I swallowed hard, then nodded. "I won't." As I drove home, I felt something shift inside me. The fear was still there, but it was no longer paralyzing. It was guiding me. By early afternoon, I had prepared a small gift bag for Noah, his favorite chocolate chip cookies, and a new puzzle I'd picked up a few days earlier. Something simple, something normal, but as I stood at my front door, keys in hand, I hesitated. A quiet voice in the back of my mind whispered something I couldn't ignore. What if I'm walking into something I'm not prepared for? I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a slow breath. Then I thought of Noah, of his trembling hands, of that note. And just like that, the hesitation was gone. "I'm coming, sweetheart," I whispered under my breath. Then I stepped outside, locked the door behind me, and headed straight for my car. Whatever was happening in that house, I was about to see it for myself. By the time I pulled into Michael's driveway, my hands were steady, but only because I was forcing them to be. The house looked exactly the same as it always did. Neatly trimmed lawn, clean windows, a welcome wreath on the front door that Ashley changed with every season. From the outside, it was the kind of place people pointed to and said, "That's a good family." But I wasn't looking at it the same way anymore. I picked up the small gift bag from the passenger seat and stepped out of the car. The air felt heavier than usual, like something unseen was pressing down on me. As I walked up to the front door, I could hear faint movement inside, a dull thud, then silence. I raised my hand and knocked. For a moment, nothing happened. Then I heard footsteps, quick controlled. The door opened just a few inches before stopping against the chain lock. Ashley stood there, her face perfectly composed. "Susan," she said, her tone light but tight around the edges. "This is a surprise." I forced a smile, lifting the gift bag slightly. "I was in the area," I said, keeping my voice warm. "Thought I'd stop by and see Noah. I brought him something." Her eyes flicked briefly to the bag, then back to me. "Oh, that's sweet," she said, "but he's not feeling well today. He's resting." My heart gave a slow, heavy beat. "I won't stay long," I replied gently. "Just a quick hello. I'd hate for him to miss out on his cookies." Ashley hesitated. It was subtle, but I saw it. Then she smiled again. "I really think it's better if he sleeps," she said. "He's had a bit of a fever." A fever. Another explanation. Another reason to keep me out. "I understand," I said softly. "But I'm already here. I can just peek in, no talking, I promise." Her fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the door. For a split second, something flickered in her eyes. Not concern, not annoyance, something sharper. Then a loud noise came from upstairs. Not a cough, not the sound of someone shifting in bed, something heavier, like something falling. Ashley's head snapped slightly toward the staircase behind her, and before she could stop it, I heard her voice. Low, sharp, "Be quiet." The words were barely louder than a whisper, but they cut through the air like glass. My stomach dropped. Ashley froze. Slowly she turned back to me. And just like that, the mask was back in place. "Kids," she said with a light laugh. "You know how they are when they're sick. Restless." I didn't smile this time. I didn't move either, because in that moment, everything inside me shifted. That wasn't the voice of a concerned mother. That was the voice of someone trying to control a situation, trying to silence something or someone. "I really should check on him," I said quietly. Ashley's smile didn't falter, but it hardened. I said, "He's resting, Susan." There it was. Not a suggestion, not a polite refusal, a boundary, a wall, and I was standing on the wrong side of it. For a moment, we just looked at each other, the air between us thick with something unspoken. Then she reached forward and gently, too gently, closed the door another inch, the chain still in place. "I'll give him the cookies when he wakes up," she said. "He'll be so happy you came by." I stood there, the gift bag still in my hand. "No," I said after a beat, my voice calm but firm. "That's okay. I'll bring them another time." Something flickered in her eyes again. This time I was sure of it. Surprise, maybe even calculation, but she didn't argue. "All right," she said smoothly, "that's fine too." I nodded once. "Well," I said, stepping back slightly, "tell him Grandma stopped by. I will." Another smile, another perfect practiced expression. And then the door closed. The soft click of the lock echoed louder than it should have. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at the wood grain of the door, my mind racing. I hadn't seen Noah. I hadn't confirmed anything, but I had heard enough. That voice, that command, "Be quiet." I turned slowly and walked back to my car, my steps measured, controlled. Only when I was safely inside the door, shut and locked, did I allow myself to exhale. My hands trembled now, not from uncertainty, from realization. Something was very wrong in that house, and Ashley didn't want me anywhere near it. I placed the gift bag on the passenger seat and gripped the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. Think Susan. What did you just learn? Ashley lied again. Noah wasn't just sick. He was being kept out of sight, controlled, silenced. And that noise. That wasn't a child tossing in bed. That was something else, something physical, something that didn't belong in a normal home. A cold wave of anger moved through me, slow and steady, not loud, not explosive, but deep, because whatever was happening in that house, Noah was in the middle of it, and he had tried to reach out to me. I reached for my phone and dialed Carol before I could second-guess myself. She answered immediately. Well, she asked. I swallowed, trying to steady my voice. She wouldn't let me in, I said he was sick. But Carol, I heard something. What kind of something? A thud, upstairs, and then I hesitated, my chest tightening. I heard her tell someone to be quiet. There was a pause on the other end. Longer this time. That doesn't sound like a sick child, Carol said quietly. No, I whispered. It doesn't. I closed my eyes, replaying the moment again. The tension in Ashley's body, the way she blocked the doorway, the way her voice changed when she thought I couldn't hear. I think he's being controlled, I said finally. Maybe worse. Carol didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. Then we don't wait around for it to get worse. I opened my eyes. What do we do? We keep gathering information, she said, carefully. We don't tip her off that we know anything. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Okay, and Susan, yes. You were right to leave, she said. If she's hiding something, pushing her today wouldn't have helped Noah. It might have made things harder for him. Her words settled something inside me, the guilt, the part of me that felt like I had failed him by walking away. You'll get another chance, Carol continued, but next time, we go in prepared. I looked down at my hands, still resting on the steering wheel. The note, the pie, the lies, the voice upstairs. All of it was forming a picture now. Not a complete one, but enough to see the outline of something dark. I'm not letting this go, I said quietly. I know you're not, Carol replied. I ended the call and sat there for a long moment, staring at the house in my rearview mirror. The curtains were still, the windows closed. From the outside, nothing had changed. But now I knew better. I shifted the car into drive and pulled away slowly, my eyes lingering just a second longer than necessary. I'm coming back, I murmured under my breath. Just hold on, Noah. Because whatever was happening behind those walls, it wasn't over, not even close. I barely remember the drive home. My body went through the motions, turning stopping signaling, but my mind stayed behind in that house, replaying every second of what I had just seen and heard. Ashley's voice. Be quiet. The sound of something falling. The way she blocked the door like she was guarding something. Or someone. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the unease had turned into something heavier. Something sharper, not just fear. Certainty. I stepped inside, set my purse down without thinking, and walked straight to the kitchen. The house felt too quiet, too still, like it was waiting for me to decide what came next. My eyes went immediately to the refrigerator, to the pie. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the closed door. If Noah was telling the truth and every instinct in my body said he was, then whatever was in that pie mattered. I opened the fridge slowly and took the box out, placing it carefully on the counter. My hands didn't shake this time. They were steady. Because now this wasn't just suspicion. This was evidence. I opened the lid again, forcing myself to look at it with fresh eyes. Golden crust, glossy surface, perfectly arranged pecans. It looked exactly like something you'd serve at a family dinner, exactly like something meant to make you trust it. I reached for a knife, then stopped. No, I wasn't going to guess. I needed to know completely. Carefully, I closed the box again and reached for my phone. Carol picked up on the first ring. Susan, I need your help, I said without preamble. I think the pie is part of this. There was a pause, then a shift in her tone. All right, she said. Tell me everything. I explained what had happened at the house, the noise, Ashley's reaction, the way she had refused to let me inside. When I finished, Carol let out a slow breath. Okay, she said. Then we treat that pie like it's dangerous. I already am, I replied, but I need it tested. Another pause. Then I might know someone. I straightened slightly. Who my nephew? Jason, he works at a veterinary clinic. They run lab tests all the time, blood work, toxicology, things like that. I frowned. You think he can check food? He can check for substances, Carol said, and more importantly, he can do it quietly. Quietly, that word mattered. Because if Ashley suspected I was onto her, I didn't know what she might do next. Call him, I said. I will. Don't touch the pie. I'll get back to you. We hung up, and I stood there in my kitchen, staring at the box like it might suddenly reveal its secrets. Minutes felt like hours. I paced. I sat. I stood again. Every second stretched thin with anticipation. Finally, my phone rang. Jason can take a look, Carol said, but you need to bring it now. He's finishing up for the day. I'm on my way. I grabbed the box, wrapping it in a reusable grocery bag, as if hiding it somehow made the situation less surreal, and headed back out the door. The drive to the clinic felt longer than it should have. My thoughts kept circling the same questions. What if I'm wrong? What if this is all a misunderstanding? What if I'm about to accuse my own family of something unthinkable? For nothing. But then Noah's face, his trembling hands. Please don't eat the pie. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. No, I wasn't wrong. I pulled into the small veterinary clinic just as the sun began to dip lower in the sky. Carol was already waiting outside, her expression serious. She opened my car door before I even had a chance to get out. You brought it, she asked. I nodded, handing her the bag. Together, we walked inside. Jason was in the back, still in his scrubs, his brow furrowed with curiosity as Carol explained briefly, carefully, that we needed something checked for possible contaminants. He didn't ask too many questions, but he did look at me, really look at me, and whatever he saw in my face must have told him this wasn't a casual request. I'll run what I can, he said, but if there's something in here, it might take a little time to confirm. That's fine, I said quickly. I just need to know if it's safe. He nodded and took the box from me, disappearing into the lab area. Carol and I sat in the small waiting room, the hum of fluorescent lights filling the silence. I clasped my hands together, trying to steady myself. Talk to me, Carol said gently. What are you thinking right now? I let out a shaky breath. I'm thinking, if there's nothing in that pie, then I'm losing my mind, and if there is. I looked down at my hands. Then my grandson saved my life. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Carol didn't argue, because we both knew it was true. Time dragged. Every minute felt like an hour. I watched the clock on the wall, the second hand ticking forward with painful slowness. Finally, after what felt like forever, Jason stepped back into the room. But something in his expression made my heart drop before he even spoke. He wasn't confused. He wasn't uncertain. He was serious. Susan, he said carefully, what exactly did you think might be in this? My throat tightened. I didn't know, I admitted. Something to make me sick, maybe. He exhaled slowly. Well, you weren't wrong. The room seemed to tilt slightly. What does that mean? Carol asked, her voice sharper now. Jason set a small report down on the table. There are significant traces of sedative compounds in that pie, he said. Not something that would normally be there, not by accident. I stared at him, my mind struggling to process the words. Sedatives, I repeated. He nodded, strong ones, enough to make someone drowsy, disoriented, possibly even unconscious, depending on the amount consumed. My chest tightened painfully. And if someone my age ate it, I asked. Jason hesitated. Then he answered carefully. It could be dangerous. Silence fell over the room, a thick, suffocating silence. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a child's imagination. This was real. Someone had put something in that pie, something meant to affect me. I swallowed hard, my voice barely above a whisper. Are you sure Jason met my eyes? I wouldn't say it if I wasn't. Carol's hand found mine again, gripping tightly. Susan, she murmured. But I couldn't look at her, because my thoughts had already moved ahead, connecting pieces, forming a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't ignore anymore. Ashley insisting I take the pie. Ashley pushing me gently repeatedly to consider easier living arrangements. Ashley talking about assisted care, about simplifying my life. If I had eaten that pie, if I had become confused, disoriented, hospitalized, who would have stepped in? Who would have made decisions for me? My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't random, I said slowly. This was planned. Neither Carol nor Jason disagreed, because there was no other explanation left. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of it all crash down on me. Betrayal. Cold, calculated betrayal. And the only reason I was standing here, thinking clearly, breathing normally, was because an 8-year-old boy had been brave enough to warn me. I opened my eyes again, a quiet determination settling deep inside me. This isn't over, I said. Carol nodded. No, she agreed. It's not. And for the first time since this began, I wasn't just afraid anymore, I was ready. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I couldn't, but because I refused to. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same image, that pie sitting harmlessly on my kitchen counter, and myself cutting into it, taking a bite, trusting it, trusting her, and then everything after that turning into something I couldn't control. No, I needed to stay sharp. By morning, the fear had settled into something colder, clearer. I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't imagining things. Someone had tried to drug me, and whether Michael knew it or not, it had happened inside his home. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of untouched coffee, the note, and Jason's lab results laid out in front of me. 2 small pieces of paper, one written by a child, one written by a professional. Together, they told a story I couldn't ignore. I picked up my phone and dialed the number David Harper had given me years ago, back when he helped me finalize my will after my husband passed. He answered on the 3rd ring. David Harper. David, it's Susan Reynolds. There was a brief pause, then his tone softened. Mrs. Reynolds, it's been a while. How are you? I hesitated. Not well, I admitted, and I need your help. Something in my voice must have reached him because his tone shifted immediately. Tell me what's going on. I'd rather not discuss it over the phone, I said. Is there any chance you could see me today? Yes, he replied without hesitation. Come in this morning. I'll clear my schedule. Thank you. I hung up and sat there for a moment, steadying myself. This was real. I was about to involve a lawyer in something that could tear my family apart. But then I looked down at Noah's note again, and I knew I didn't have a choice. David's office was exactly as I remembered it. Quiet, orderly, lined with shelves of neatly organized files and books that spoke of years of careful work. He greeted me warmly, but his eyes were already studying my face. You look like you haven't slept, he said gently as he gestured for me to sit. I haven't, I replied. Once we were seated, I didn't waste time. I placed the folded note and the lab report in front of him. Read these, I said. He picked up the note, first his expression neutral at the start, but as his eyes moved across the words, something shifted. Then he set it down and picked up the lab report. This time his jaw tightened slightly. When he looked up at me again, the warmth in his expression had been replaced with something far more serious. Where did this come from? He asked. I took a breath and told him everything. The dinner, the pie, Noah slipping me the note, Ashley refusing to let me see him, the noise upstairs, the lie about school, the sedatives. I didn't rush, I didn't dramatize. I just told the truth. By the time I finished, the room felt heavier. David leaned back in his chair. His fingers steepled in front of him as he processed everything. All right, he said finally. Let's take this step by step. I nodded, my hands folded tightly in my lap. First, he continued tapping the lab report lightly. If this is accurate, and I have no reason to believe it isn't, then someone intentionally placed a sedative substance into food given to you. Yes, that alone is extremely serious. My stomach tightened, I know. Second, he went on, the note from your grandson suggests he was aware of the danger and felt unsafe enough to warn you in secret. I swallowed hard. Yes. David paused, studying me carefully. And third, you have reason to believe there may be ongoing manipulation or control within your son's household. The words sounded clinical when he said them, but they didn't feel clinical. They felt personal. They felt like betrayal. I don't know how much my son knows, I said quietly, but something is wrong in that house. David nodded slowly. Then we proceed carefully. I leaned forward slightly. What does that mean? It means you do not confront them, he said firmly. Not yet. A flicker of frustration rose in my chest. But Noah, I understand your concern. He interrupted gently. But if what you suspect is true, confronting them prematurely could put him at greater risk. That stopped me. Because deep down, I knew he was right. If they realize you're aware of what's happening, he continued, they could change their behavior, destroy evidence, or isolate him further. I closed my eyes briefly. I can't let that happen. And you won't, David said. But we need to be strategic. I opened my eyes again. What do we do? He reached for a notepad and began writing. First, we secure you. Secure me. Yes, he said, looking up. If someone is attempting to manipulate your health or mental state, we need to make sure they cannot gain any legal control over your finances, property, or medical decisions. My chest tightened slightly. You think that's what this is about? I think it's a possibility we cannot ignore, he replied. I thought back to Ashley's repeated suggestions, selling the house, simplifying my life, moving somewhere easier. A cold realization settled over me. She's been pushing me toward assisted living, I said slowly. David nodded. That fits the pattern. My hands curled slightly into fists. She's been planning this, it appears so, he said calmly, which is why we act now. He began outlining steps. We review your will. We update any documents that grant access to your accounts. We revoke any broad permissions that may have been given under the guise of emergency planning. My heart skipped. Michael asked me to sign something a few months ago, I said. He said it was just in case something happened. David's pen paused mid-motion. Do you have a copy? I think so. Good, he said. We'll review it immediately. A wave of unease passed through me. Had I unknowingly given them access? Given her access, Second David continued, we begin documenting everything. Everything. Dates, times, conversations, observations, he said. What you heard, what you saw, what Noah told you, what the lab results show. I nodded slowly. I can do that. And third, he added his tone. Sharpening slightly, we gather more evidence before taking any formal action. I looked at him. What kind of evidence? Proof of intent, he said. Proof of pattern. Anything that demonstrates this is not an isolated incident. I thought of Ashley's voice. Be quiet. I thought of Noah's absence from school, the bruise on his wrist, the sedatives. It's already a pattern, I whispered. Yes, David agreed, but we need to show it clearly, legally, undeniably. I sat back in my chair, the weight of everything pressing down on me. This wasn't just a family problem anymore. This was something else, something dangerous. What about Noah? I asked softly. David's expression softened. We keep him in mind with every step he said, but we protect him best by making sure we don't act too soon. I nodded, even though it hurt, because every part of me wanted to go back to that house and take him out of there immediately. But I couldn't risk making things worse. Not for him, not now. All right, I said finally, we do it your way. David gave a small approving nod. Good. He slid the note and lab report back toward me. Keep these safe, he said. And Susan. I looked up. You did the right thing coming here, he said. Many people would have ignored this. You didn't. I let out a slow breath. I almost did, I admitted. But you didn't, he repeated, and that made all the difference. As I left his office, the world outside felt a little different. Not lighter, not easier, but clearer. I had a plan now. I had proof, and I had someone on my side who understood what we were dealing with, but more than anything, I had a reason to keep going, a small folded piece of paper in my purse, and a little boy who trusted me enough to write it. I won't fail you, I whispered under my breath as I walked to my car. Not now, not ever. Sunday mornings had always been predictable in our family. Church at 10, the same wooden pew halfway down the aisle, a quiet hymn that settled something deep in your chest. And afterward, a few minutes in the courtyard where children ran in circles while adults talked about weather work and things that felt safe. It was one of the few places Ashley couldn't completely control. That thought stayed with me as I parked my car that morning, my hands tightening slightly around the steering wheel. If there was any chance at all that I could speak to Noah without her watching every word, it would be here. I stepped out of the car and adjusted my coat, forcing myself to breathe slowly. Calm, natural. Nothing out of place. David's voice echoed in my mind. Don't confront, observe, gather. But my heart had its own voice. Find him. Inside, the church was already filling with familiar faces. I greeted a few people automatically, my smile practiced but distant. My eyes moved constantly, scanning the room. And then I saw them. Michael sat in the pew, his shoulders slightly hunched, his eyes fixed forward in a way that didn't feel like prayer. It felt like exhaustion. Ashley sat beside him, perfectly composed as always, her posture straight, her expression serene, and Noah sat on the other side of her. Still. Too still. His hands were folded in his lap, his gaze lowered as if he had learned not to look around too much. Something inside me twisted. That wasn't the boy who used to wave at me across the room. That was a child trying not to be noticed. I moved quietly down the aisle and took my usual seat behind them, close enough to see, not close enough to draw attention. At one point, Noah shifted slightly, his sleeve sliding back just a fraction. There it was again. That faint mark on his wrist. This time I didn't look away. I watched. And when he quickly pulled his sleeve down again, glancing sideways toward Ashley, I knew. He wasn't clumsy. He was careful. The service passed in a blur. I heard the words, but I didn't absorb them. My mind stayed fixed on one thing. How do I get to him? When the final hymn ended and people began to rise, my pulse quickened. This was my moment. Families started to gather their things. Conversations filled the room. Movement created noise. Distraction opportunity. Ashley turned to speak to another woman in the pew ahead. Michael stood slowly rubbing the back of his neck, already looking like he wanted to leave, and Noah stepped slightly away from them, just a few feet. But it was enough. I moved. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, softly, kneeling slightly so I was at his level. He looked up, startled at first. Then his eyes softened. "Grandma," he whispered. The word broke something inside me. I smiled gently, reaching out to adjust the collar of his shirt. A simple gesture, something that wouldn't draw attention. "You doing okay?" I asked quietly. He nodded. Too quickly, too automatically. "Yes," he said. But his eyes said something else. I leaned in just a little closer. "You can tell me the truth," I whispered. His gaze flickered past me toward his mother, then back to me. And in that moment, I saw it. Fear. Not the kind children have of the dark or loud noises, the kind that sits deep, the kind that watches every word before it leaves your mouth. "I'm okay," he repeated softly. I swallowed, keeping my voice steady. "Did you mean what you wrote to me?" I asked, barely louder than a breath. His fingers curled slightly into his sleeves. For a second I thought he might deny it. But then he nodded, small, almost invisible. My chest tightened. "Why?" I asked, gently. "What's going on, baby?" He hesitated, and then in the smallest voice I had ever heard from him, he said, "Mom says you're getting old." The words hit harder than I expected. I blinked. "What do you mean?" "She says you forget things," he continued, his eyes dropping to the floor, "and that soon you won't be able to take care of yourself." A cold feeling spread through me. That wasn't concern. That was a narrative, a story being planted. "Does she say that to you?" I asked. He nodded again. "And to Dad?" he added quietly. My breath caught. "To your dad sometimes," he said, "when he's tired." I thought of Michael at the dinner table, quiet, distant, exhausted. "What else, Noah?" I asked softly. "You can tell me." He shifted his weight, his body angling slightly closer to mine, as if instinctively seeking protection. "She gives Dad medicine," he whispered. My heart skipped. "Medicine," he nodded. "In his tea," he said. "At night." I felt the world tilt slightly beneath me. "Why?" He shook his head. "I don't know," he said. "She says it helps him sleep, but sometimes he doesn't wake up in the morning until really late." A slow, heavy realization began to form. This wasn't just about me. "Have you ever seen her put anything in my food?" I asked carefully. His eyes widened slightly. Then he nodded. My stomach dropped. When I pressed. "Last night," he whispered, "when you were in the living room. She put something in the pie. The air left my lungs. And that's why you wrote the note." He nodded again. I didn't want you to eat it, he said. I didn't want you to get sick like Dad. My hands trembled slightly, but I kept my voice calm. You did the right thing, I said softly. You were very brave. He looked up at me, then his eyes searching. I didn't know how to tell you, he admitted. Mom listens a lot. That made my chest tighten. What do you mean, I asked. He leaned in closer, his voice barely audible. She stands outside my door sometimes, he said, and she checks my phone. And she gets mad if I say the wrong things. The world around us faded. All I could hear was him. All I could see was the weight this child had been carrying alone. So I wrote it, he said, because she wouldn't see. My vision blurred slightly. This wasn't just fear, this was survival. You did exactly right, I whispered, my voice thick. Exactly right. For a moment neither of us spoke, then he said something that made my heart stop. She talks about your house, he whispered. My breath caught. What about it? She says when you move. Everything will be easier, he said, and that once you sign the papers, we won't have to worry anymore. The words echoed in my mind. Once you sign the papers. I felt something inside me go cold. This was bigger than I had even realized. Much bigger. Noah, I said gently, forcing myself to stay calm, has she ever asked you to keep secrets from me? He nodded slowly. She says not to tell you things that would confuse you, he said, because you're older. A sharp, controlled anger rose in my chest. Not loud, not explosive, but deep, calculated, because this wasn't just manipulation. This was a plan, and they had been building it for a long time. I reached out and took his hand gently. You listened to me, I said softly but firmly. You did nothing wrong. Do you understand? He nodded, but his grip tightened around my fingers. Are you going to leave me there? He asked quietly. The question hit like a knife. For a second I couldn't speak. Then I leaned closer, my voice steady. No, I said, I'm not going to leave you. Not like that. Not anymore. From across the room I heard Ashley's voice. Noah, sharp, calling him back. His body stiffened instantly. I have to go, he whispered. I released his hand slowly. Okay, I said, but I'm here, always. He gave me one last look, then he turned and walked back to his parents. Ashley's eyes flicked toward me as he approached, and for a brief moment our gazes met. She smiled, but this time, I saw exactly what was behind it. And I knew. This wasn't over, not even close. I didn't go home right away after church. I couldn't. Everything Noah had told me was still echoing in my mind, layering over the pieces I already had, until the picture became impossible to ignore. This wasn't suspicion anymore. It was a pattern, a deliberate, carefully constructed pattern. Ashley wasn't just controlling the household, she was shaping reality inside it. For Noah, for Michael, and if she had succeeded, for me. I sat in my car in the church parking lot, my hands resting on the steering wheel, my thoughts moving faster than I could organize them. She gives Dad medicine. She puts something in the pie. She talks about your house. Once you sign the papers... I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying my breathing. Think, Susan. What do you know? What can you prove? What can you protect? David's voice came back to me clearly. We secure you first, yes. That was the first step. Because if Ashley's plan depended on making me appear confused, weak, or incapable, then I needed to make sure that no one could legally step in and take control of my life. I started the car and drove straight home. The moment I walked through the door, I moved with purpose. No hesitation, no second guessing. I went directly to my study, where I kept all my important documents locked in a small filing cabinet. I knelt down, pulled out the bottom drawer, and unlocked it with hands that were steady now. Not from calm, but from resolve. Inside were years of my life. My will, bank statements, insurance policies, property deeds, and somewhere in here, the paperwork Michael had asked me to sign a few months ago. I began sorting through the files quickly, but carefully scanning each document as I went. There, a thin folder labeled Emergency Planning. My stomach tightened. I opened it slowly. The document inside looked official, clean, structured, full of language that felt reassuring at the time. I remembered Michael sitting at my kitchen table explaining it with a tired smile. "Just in case something happens, Mom. It's easier this way." I had trusted him. I had signed it. Now as I read through the fine print, that trust felt like something fragile I had handed over without fully understanding. Durable financial access. Medical decision authorization, broad permissions, too broad, far too broad. My breath caught. If something had happened to me, if I had been hospitalized, disoriented, unable to advocate for myself, Michael would have had full authority. And if Ashley was influencing him, my grip tightened on the paper. This wasn't just a coincidence. This was a setup. Careful, patient, planned. I placed the document flat on the desk and stepped back slightly, my mind racing. No, not anymore. I reached for my phone and dialed David. He answered quickly. "Susan." "I found the paperwork," I said, "the one Michael had me sign." There was a pause. "And it gives him access to everything," I said quietly. "Finances, medical decisions, everything." His tone sharpened immediately. "Do not sign anything else," he said, "and do not discuss this with them. I won't. We need to revoke that immediately," he continued. "I'll prepare the documents today. You'll come in and sign them in person." "Yes. And Susan," he added. "Yes, bring that document with you. We'll go through it line by line." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. "Okay." We ended the call, and I stood there for a moment, the weight of what I had just uncovered settling into my chest. Ashley hadn't been improvising. She had been building towards something, and I had been one step away from giving her exactly what she needed. I carefully placed the document back into the folder, but not in the cabinet. This time I set it aside on my desk, where I could see it, where I wouldn't forget. The rest of the afternoon moved quickly. I gathered every financial document I could find, account numbers, passwords, property records, anything that could be used or misused. I made copies, organized them, separated what needed to be protected from what needed to be reviewed. By the time I finished, my study looked like a small war room. Papers spread across the desk, notes written in the margins, a legal pad filled with dates, observations, fragments of conversations. I wrote everything down. The dinner, the note, the pie, Ashley's voice upstairs, Noah's words at church. Every detail mattered now. Every detail could become proof. As the sun began to set, I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes for a moment. I should have felt exhausted, but I didn't. I felt focused, because for the first time since this began, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was preparing. A soft knock at the door pulled me out of my thoughts. I stood and walked to the front door, opening it to find Carol standing there, her expression serious but steady. "I brought coffee," she said, lifting a small bag. I smiled faintly. "You always know when I need it." She stepped inside, her eyes immediately taking in the state of the house, or rather the state of my study. "Well," she said, glancing at the papers spread across the desk, "I'd say you've been busy." "I have," I replied. We sat down together and I began walking her through everything. The document Michael had me sign, David's plan to revoke it, the notes I had started compiling. She listened carefully, asking questions when needed, her mind working alongside mine. Then, after a moment of silence, she said something that made my chest tighten again. "I saw Ashley yesterday," she said. I looked up. "Where near your house?" she replied. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. What was she doing here? Carol shook her head slowly. "I'm not sure. She was parked down the street, sitting in her car." My pulse quickened. "For how long?" "Long enough for me to notice," she said, "and long enough that it didn't feel like a coincidence." I stood up slowly, my heart beginning to pound. "She's been here before," I said. Carol frowned. "Well, what do you mean?" I walked to the kitchen and pointed toward the back door. "Michael used to have a spare key," I said, "from years ago, before Ashley." Carol's eyes widened slightly. "You think she still has access?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But if she does—" I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to. We both understood. I walked quickly back to the study and pulled up the small security system control panel I had barely used over the years. Then I looked at Carol. That changes today. She nodded firmly. Good. Within the next hour, I had scheduled a technician to install cameras front door, back door, driveway. Every entrance, every angle. If Ashley had been coming onto my property, that ended now. Later that night, after Carol had gone home and the house had settled into silence again, I stood by the window looking out into the dark. For the first time, I didn't see my home as just a place of comfort. I saw it as something else, something valuable, something someone wanted, and something I was going to protect at all costs. I reached into my pocket and pulled out Noah's note, unfolding it gently. The creases were already soft from how many times I had read it. "Grandma, please don't eat the pie, and please don't leave me here tonight." I traced the shaky handwriting with my finger, my chest tightening. "I didn't," I whispered, "and I won't, because now I understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about him, and whatever Ashley was planning, she had already gone too far, but she wasn't finished, not yet, and neither was I. By Monday morning, I had stopped thinking like a mother and started thinking like someone being targeted. Every move mattered now, every word, every reaction. David had been clear. We gather evidence before we act, and that meant one thing: I had to get Ashley to talk. Not accuse her, not confront her, but lead her, let her believe she was winning. The thought made something inside me tighten. I had spent my entire life being honest, straightforward. I wasn't someone who played games. I wasn't someone who pretended. But this wasn't a game. This was protection. For Noah, for myself, and maybe even for Michael. I sat at my kitchen table that morning, staring at my phone for a long moment before finally picking it up. Then I dialed Ashley. She answered on the second ring. "Susan," she said, her voice warm, almost too warm. What a nice surprise. I swallowed, forcing my tone to soften. "I've been thinking," I said slowly, "about what you mentioned before, about making things easier." There was a brief pause. Not long, but long enough for me to hear it. "Oh," she said. "Yes," I continued, keeping my voice steady, almost hesitant. "I think you might be right. I've been feeling overwhelmed lately." The lie tasted bitter, but I pushed through it. "I don't know how much longer I can manage everything on my own." On the other end of the line, something shifted. Not in what she said, but in how quickly she responded. "Oh, Susan, I'm so glad you're open to talking about this," Ashley said, her voice smoothing into something gentle, reassuring, too smooth. "We've all been worried about you," she added. "We," as if this concern had been shared, as if it had been real. "I know," I said quietly. "Maybe I should come by later. We can talk." "You don't have to come here," she said quickly. "I can come to you." Of course she could. That was easier, controlled, predictable. "That would be nice," I replied. "How about this afternoon? That works." We ended the call and I set the phone down slowly, my heart beating harder than I expected. She took the bait, too easily. That alone told me everything I needed to know. I didn't waste time. I went straight to the small drawer in my study and pulled out the recording device David had suggested. Simple, discreet, easy to activate. I placed it on the kitchen counter and stared at it for a moment. This was real. I was about to record my own daughter-in-law because I believed she had tried to poison me. The weight of that reality settled heavily in my chest. But then I thought of Noah, and I pressed the button. Ashley arrived 20 minutes early. I saw her through the front window as she stepped out of her car, dressed neatly. As always, her posture confident, her expression already arranged into concern. I opened the door before she could knock. "Susan," she said, stepping forward with a warm smile. "You look tired." "I haven't been sleeping well," I replied truthfully. She stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room briefly, always observing, always calculating. "I'm so glad you called," she said. "We've been wanting to talk to you about this for a while." I gestured toward the kitchen. "Let's sit." We took our places at the table. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Ashley leaned forward slightly, her hands folded neatly in front of her. "You said you've been feeling overwhelmed," she prompted gently. I nodded, lowering my gaze just enough to appear uncertain. "I forget things sometimes," I said. "Little things, where I put my keys, what I was about to do." Her eyes sharpened just for a second, then softened again. "That's completely normal," she said quickly, "especially at your age." At your age, the words landed exactly where she intended them to. I let out a small, shaky breath. "I don't want to become a burden," I said. "You wouldn't be a burden," she replied immediately. "Not to us." But something in her tone didn't match the words. It was too eager, too ready. "I've been thinking about selling the house," I said slowly. That did it. For the first time since she arrived, Ashley's composure cracked just slightly. Her eyes lit up, only for a moment. But I saw it. "That might be a very wise decision," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "This house is a lot for one person." I nodded. "It is." "And there are wonderful places," she continued, leaning in just a little more. "Beautiful communities where you'd be taken care of, where everything would be easier." Easier. That word again. What would happen to everything else, I asked, keeping my tone soft, uncertain. The accounts, the paperwork. Ashley didn't hesitate. "Well, Michael would help manage that," she said. "You wouldn't have to worry about a thing." My chest tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. "And if something happened to me?" I asked. She tilted her head slightly. "What do you mean if I got sick?" I said, or confused. There it was again. That flicker. She leaned back slightly, her voice lowering into something more measured. "Then it would be even more important to have everything in place," she said. "So decisions could be made quickly, smoothly, as if my life were a process to be managed, not something to be lived." And the house, I pressed. "We'd take care of it," she said. "Sell it most likely. Make sure the funds are handled properly. Always we." I felt a cold wave move through me. "And Noah?" I asked suddenly. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "What about him? He seems quiet lately," I said. "I worry about him." Ashley smiled again, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. "He's just going through a phase," she said. "He can be a little sensitive. Another label. Another way to dismiss what I had seen with my own eyes." "I see," I said softly. There was a pause. Then Ashley leaned forward again, her voice dropping just enough to feel confidential. "Susan," she said, "the sooner we start making these changes, the easier everything will be. Everything. Not just my life. Everything." I met her gaze, holding it just a second longer than before. "What do you mean?" I asked. She hesitated. Just briefly. But it was enough. "Once you're settled," she said carefully, "the rest becomes simple." Simple. That word echoed in my mind. Simple for who, not for me, for her. I felt my pulse steady, my thoughts sharpening. This was it. This was the moment. She had just revealed more than she realized. I leaned back slightly, nodding as if I understood. "As long as things are handled properly," I said. "They will be," she assured me, and quickly I added. A small smile touched her lips. "Yes," she said, very quickly. There it was, clear, cold, certain. I didn't say anything else for a moment. I just let the silence sit between us. Then I smiled, a small, tired smile. "Thank you for helping me think this through," I said. "Of course," she replied, standing. "We're family." Family. The word felt hollow now. She gathered her purse, her movements calm, controlled. "I'll talk to Michael," she added. "We can start putting things into motion." "I'd like that," I said. She paused at the door, turning back to me one last time. "You're making the right decision, Susan," she said. I held her gaze. "I hope so." She smiled, then she left. The door closed behind her with a soft click. And just like that, the mask was gone. I stood there for a moment, listening to the silence of the house. Then I walked slowly back to the kitchen table and reached for the recording device. My fingers hovered over it for a second before I pressed stop. Everything she had said, every word, every tone, captured. I let out a slow breath, my heart pounding, not from fear this time, but from something else. Clarity. She just told me her plan, I whispered to myself. Not directly, not openly, but clearly enough. I picked up the device and held it tightly in my hand. "This is far from over," I said quietly, because now I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was one step ahead. The call came just after midnight. At first, I didn't hear it. I had finally fallen into a restless sleep on the couch, the television still glowing softly in the background, my mind too exhausted to keep spinning but not at peace. Then the phone rang again. Sharp. Urgent. I sat up suddenly, my heart already racing before I even reached for it. Hello. There was a pause. Then Grandma Noah. His voice was small, shaking. Instantly, every part of me went alert. Noah, what's wrong? I asked, already standing, already moving. I took Dad's phone, he whispered. Mom's in the bathroom. My chest tightened. What happened? Another pause. Then his voice cracked. Dad won't wake up. The words hit me like ice water. What do you mean he won't wake up? I demanded, my voice sharper now. I tried. He said he's breathing uneven. I shook him and called him, but he won't open his eyes. He's just there. A cold, terrifying realization spread through me. Listen to me carefully, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. Is he breathing? Yes, Noah said quickly, but he won't wake up. Okay, I said. Okay, you did the right thing calling me. My mind was already moving, fast, clear. This wasn't normal. This wasn't an accident. Where is your mom? I asked. In the bathroom, he repeated. She said she was going to take a shower. My grip tightened on the phone. Stay where you are, I said. Don't go near her. Do you understand? Yes. I'm coming right now, I said, and I'm bringing help. Okay, he whispered. I'm right behind you, sweetheart, I said. You're not alone. I hung up and immediately dialed 911. My voice didn't shake this time. It was calm, controlled. There's a man unconscious at 214 Willow Creek Drive, I said clearly. Possible drug overdose. His son is on the scene. I'm on my way. They told me help was already being dispatched. I grabbed my keys and ran out the door. The drive felt endless. Every red light felt like an obstacle. Every second stretched thin with urgency. My mind replayed Noah's words over and over. Dad won't wake up. She gives him medicine. In his tea. My chest tightened with a mixture of fear and something else. Something darker. Anger, because this wasn't just a possibility anymore. This was happening. Right now. When I turned onto their street, I saw the flashing lights before I even reached the house. Police, an ambulance. Relief and dread collided in my chest. I pulled up quickly, barely remembering to shut off the engine before stepping out. Ma'am, you can't. One of the officers started, but I didn't stop. My grandson is inside, I said firmly. He called me. That was enough. They let me through. The front door was open. The house felt different now. Not polished, not perfect. Chaotic, raw. Inside, paramedics were already moving quickly around Michael, who lay on the living room couch. His skin looked pale. Too pale. A mask covered his face as they worked checking vitals, preparing equipment. Noah, I called out. A small figure moved from the corner of the room. He ran straight into me. Grandma. He cried, his arms wrapping tightly around my waist. I held him just as tightly, my heart breaking at how hard he was shaking. I'm here, I whispered. I'm here. He wouldn't wake up, Noah said, his voice muffled against me. I tried. I really tried. You did everything right, I said firmly. Everything. Behind us, I heard movement. Ashley. She stood near the hallway, her hair damp, her robe pulled tightly around her. Her face looked shocked, concerned, perfectly composed. What's going on? She demanded. What happened to him? I turned slowly, keeping one arm around Noah. You tell me, I said, my voice colder than I had ever heard it. Her eyes flickered for a split second. Then she shook her head quickly. I don't know, she said. He had a drink earlier. Maybe he mixed something. No. The word came from Noah, soft but clear. Ashley's head snapped toward him. Noah, don't, you gave it to him, he said, his voice trembling but steady, in his tea. The room went still. Every sound seemed to pause for a fraction of a second. Ashley's expression hardened instantly. That's not true, she said sharply. You don't know what you're talking about. I saw you. Noah insisted, his grip tightening on me. Ashley took a step forward. That's enough, she said, her voice low, warning. Instinctively, I moved Noah slightly behind me. You don't get to silence him anymore, I said. The tension in the room shifted. The officers nearby turned their attention toward us. Ashley seemed to realize it too. Her expression softened immediately. I'm not trying to silence him, she said quickly. He's just confused. He's been under a lot of stress. No, I said again, because now I saw it clearly. the pattern, the manipulation, the way she twisted everything to fit her version of reality. "He's telling the truth," I said. One of the paramedics spoke up from behind us. "Ma'am, we need space." I nodded, stepping back slightly, keeping Noah close. They worked quickly, efficiently, focused. After a few tense minutes, one of them looked up. "He's stable," he said, "but we're taking him in." Relief washed through me, but it didn't last long. Because stable didn't mean safe, and this wasn't over, not even close. As they prepared to move, Michael, one of the officers, approached Ashley. "Ma'am," he said, "we're going to need you to answer a few questions." She nodded quickly, her composure returning. "Of course," she said, "anything I can do to help," but I saw it. The flicker. The calculation. The shift. She was already adjusting her story, already preparing her version of events. I tightened my hold on Noah. Not this time, not anymore. As the stretcher was wheeled out, I leaned down slightly, speaking softly into Noah's ear. "You're coming with me tonight," I said. His body relaxed just a fraction. "Okay," he whispered. I stood up straight, my eyes meeting Ashley's across the room. For a brief moment, everything was clear. No more masks. No more pretending. She knew, and I knew, and whatever game she had been playing, it had just changed. Completely. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and sleepless nights. By the time we arrived, Michael had already been taken into a treatment room, the doors swinging shut behind the gurney as nurses and doctors moved with practiced urgency. Noah sat beside me in the waiting area, his small hand wrapped tightly around mine. He hadn't let go since we left the house. Neither had I. "It's going to be okay," I told him softly, though the truth was I didn't know that yet. He nodded, but his eyes stayed fixed on the double doors. "I thought he was dead," he whispered. The words hit me like a quiet storm. I squeezed his hand gently. "You did the right thing calling me," I said again. "You helped him. Remember that." He leaned slightly against me, and for a moment I let myself just sit there with him, feeling the weight of everything settle around us. Across the room, Ashley was speaking to one of the officers. Her posture was calm, controlled, even now. She gestured occasionally, her face shifting between concern and confusion, as if she were trying to make sense of something unexpected. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed her. That was the most terrifying part. David had warned me. People like this don't panic the way you expect them to. They adapt, they adjust, they perform. After a while, Officer Denise Carter approached us, her expression steady but kind. "Mrs. Reynolds," she asked. I looked up. "Yes." "I'm going to need to ask you a few questions," she said. "Is that all right?" I nodded. "Of course." She glanced briefly at Noah. "Would you prefer to speak privately?" I looked down at him. He tightened his grip on my hand. "I want to stay," he said quietly. I met her eyes again. "He stays," I said. She gave a small nod. "All right." She pulled a chair over and sat across from us, her notebook resting on her lap. "Can you tell me what happened tonight?" she asked. I took a slow breath. "My grandson called me," I began. "He said his father wouldn't wake up." She nodded, and before tonight, that question hung in the air for a moment, because now there was no going back. I reached into my purse and pulled out the folded note, placing it gently on her notebook. "He gave me this 2 nights ago," I said. She unfolded it carefully, her eyes scanning the words. Her expression changed almost immediately. "Did you eat the pie?" she asked. "No," I said. "I had it tested." Her eyes lifted to meet mine, and I pulled out the lab report and handed it to her. "It contained sedatives," I said, "a significant amount." She read quickly, her face growing more serious with each line. "Where did this come from?" she asked. "A veterinary lab," I replied, "through a trusted contact." She nodded slowly, absorbing that. "And you believe, I believe someone put it there intentionally," I said. My voice didn't shake. "Not anymore." She glanced toward Ashley, who was still speaking with another officer. "Who had access to the pie?" she asked. "It was made by my daughter-in-law," I said. Noah shifted beside me. "I saw her," he whispered. Officer Carter looked at him gently. "You saw what sweetheart he swallowed." "She put something in it," he said, "when Grandma wasn't looking." The officer's pen paused for a moment before continuing. "Thank you," she said softly. Then she turned back to me. Have there been any other incidents? She asked. I hesitated. Then I nodded. Yes, and I told her everything. The visit to the house, Ashley refusing to let me inside, the noise upstairs, the lie about school, the marks on Noah's wrist, the conversations about my house, the pressure to move into assisted living, the paperwork Michael had asked me to sign, every detail, every moment. By the time I finished, the weight of it all hung heavily between us. Officer Carter closed her notebook slowly. All right, she said. We're going to take this very seriously. I nodded. I hope so. We will, she assured me. But we need to proceed carefully. There was that word again. Carefully. I understood it. I didn't like it, but I understood it. Before I could respond, the double doors opened. A doctor stepped out, scanning the room. Family of Michael Reynolds. I stood immediately. That's me. He walked over, his expression professional but not unkind. He's stable, he said. We've managed to bring him around. Relief flooded through me so suddenly it made my knees weak. Can I see him? I asked. In a moment, he said. He's still disoriented, but he's asking for you. I knotted my throat tight. Thank you. He gave a small nod and stepped away. I turned to Noah. Stay with Officer Carter for a minute, okay? He looked uncertain, but nodded. I leaned down and kissed the top of his head. I'll be right back. Then I followed the nurse down the hallway. Michael looked smaller somehow. Lying in that hospital bed, his face pale, his eyes unfocused. For a moment, all I saw was my little boy, the one who used to run into my arms after school, the one who trusted me completely. Mom, he said weakly when he saw me. I stepped closer. I'm here, I said. He blinked slowly, trying to focus. What happened? He asked. I hesitated, because this was the moment, the line between truth and denial. You tell me, I said gently. He frowned slightly, his brow creasing. I had tea, he said slowly. Then I felt tired. His eyes shifted, searching. I don't remember anything after that. My chest tightened. Michael, I said softly, has this happened before? He hesitated. Then a flicker of recognition crossed his face. Sometimes he admitted quietly. At night, I just thought I was exhausted. I nodded slowly. Did Ashley ever give you anything in your tea? He went still. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then his eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Fear. I don't know, he said. Maybe. I took a breath. I need you to listen to me, I said. And I need you to be honest. He nodded weakly. I reached into my purse and placed the note and the lab report on the table beside his bed. He looked at them, confused at first. Then he picked up the note. His hands trembled slightly as he read it. Grandma, please don't eat the pie. His voice trailed off. Slowly he set it down and picked up the lab report. As he read, his face changed. Confusion, disbelief, then something deeper, something breaking. No, he whispered. No. That doesn't make sense. I didn't interrupt. I let him sit with it. Let him process. Mom, he said finally, his voice cracking slightly. You think Ashley. I think something is very wrong, I said. He shook his head weakly. She wouldn't. She made the pie, I said quietly. He went silent. I watched the realization begin to form. Slow, painful, reluctant. Noah said he saw her, I added. That did it. His eyes closed briefly, his face tightening as if he were trying to hold something together that was already falling apart. I've been so tired, he said, all the time. I thought it was work, stress. I thought his voice broke. I didn't see it. The guilt in his voice was sharp, heavy. I didn't protect him, he whispered. I stepped closer, placing my hand gently over his. You didn't know, I said. But I should have, he replied. I didn't argue, because part of me agreed. But this wasn't the time for blame. This was the time for truth. And for the first time, he was finally seeing it. Michael didn't speak for a long time after that. He just stared at the ceiling, his breathing uneven, his hand still gripping mine, like he needed something solid to hold onto while everything else shifted beneath him. I didn't rush him. Some truths don't arrive all at once. They come in pieces, and each piece hurts. Finally, he turned his head slightly, his voice low. How long, he asked. I understood the question immediately. How long has this been happening? I hesitated. I don't know for certain, I admitted, but long enough for Noah to be afraid, long enough for patterns to form. Michael closed his eyes again, a deep, pained breath leaving his chest. I thought he was just going through a phase, he said. Ashley said he was being sensitive, that he needed structure. Structure. I felt a flicker of anger, but I kept my voice calm. And you believed her, I said gently. He nodded. She handles everything, he said. Schedules, school calls, meals. I've been so busy at work, He stopped, his voice tightening. I let her take control. There it was. Not cruelty, not intention, but absence. And absence in the wrong hands can be just as dangerous. Michael, I said softly, I need you to think carefully. Has anything else felt off, anything you ignored? He frowned slightly, his brow creasing as he searched his memory. Money, he said after a moment. My attention sharpened. What about it? I thought we were doing fine, he said. But lately, things haven't been adding up. Bills I don't remember. Transfers I didn't authorize, but Ashley said she handled them. A cold wave moved through me. Did you check? He shook his head weakly. I trusted her, he said. The words hung in the air. Trust. That fragile thing again. Michael. I said carefully, there's more. He looked at me. I took a slow breath. The police are involved now, I said, and I've already spoken to a lawyer. His eyes widened slightly. A lawyer, yes, I said, because this isn't just about what happened tonight. I reached into my purse again and pulled out the copies of the documents I had brought with me. The paperwork you asked me to sign, I said. Do you remember it? He nodded slowly. Emergency planning, he said. In case something happened to you. I placed the papers in front of him. It gives you full control, I said. Financially, medically, everything. He blinked clearly, trying to process. I knew it gave me access, but Michael, I interrupted gently if something had happened to me. If I had been confused or hospitalized, you would have had the legal authority to make decisions on my behalf. His expression shifted from confusion to realization. To sell your house, he said quietly. I nodded and managed the funds. Silence fell between us, heavy, unavoidable. I didn't think about it like that, he whispered. I know, I said. He ran a hand over his face, his breathing uneven. She pushed for it, he admitted, said it was the responsible thing to do, that it would make things easier for everyone. Easier. That word again, always that word, for who I asked quietly. He didn't answer, because now he knew. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us absorbing the weight of what was unfolding. Then he spoke again. Her debt, he said suddenly. I looked up. What about it? She told me she had some student loans, he said, nothing major. But a few weeks ago I saw something on her laptop, a notification. It didn't look like a student loan. My pulse quickened. What did it look like? A past due notice, he said, large amount. I asked her about it and she brushed it off, said it was a mistake. I leaned back slightly, my mind racing. Michael, the police are going to look into everything I said, financial records, communications, everything. He nodded slowly. I know. And if what we suspect is true, I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't have to. He closed his eyes again, his voice barely audible. She planned this. It wasn't a question. It was a realization, a painful one. Yes, I said quietly. He let out a long, shaky breath. I brought her into our home, he said. I trusted her with my son. His voice broke slightly, and I didn't see any of this. I squeezed his hand gently. You're seeing it now, I said. But even as I said it, I knew that didn't erase what had already happened. A soft knock on the door interrupted us. Officer Carter stepped inside, her expression composed but serious. Mr. Reynolds, she said. How are you feeling? Michael shifted slightly. Better, he said, still confused. That's understandable, she replied. We've reviewed the initial findings from the paramedics. She paused, glancing briefly at me. Your system showed signs consistent with sedative ingestion, she continued. Michael's face went pale. I didn't take anything he said quickly. We're aware, she said calmly. That's why we need to ask you a few questions. He nodded. Okay. She stepped closer, her tone professional but measured. Have you noticed anything unusual in your food or drinks recently? Michael hesitated. Then he looked at me, then back at her. Maybe he said, "Can you explain?" He took a slow breath. "I've been unusually tired," he said, "at night especially. I drink tea before bed. Ashley usually makes it." Officer Carter nodded, jotting something down. "And after drinking it, I feel heavy," he said, "like I can't stay awake." She exchanged a brief glance with me. "And tonight?" "Same thing," he said, "tea." Then nothing. She nodded again. "Thank you," she said. "That's very helpful." She paused, then added carefully, "We've also begun reviewing digital records." My attention sharpened. "Digital records?" I asked. She looked at me. "Your daughter-in-law's devices," she said. "Preliminary findings." My heart began to pound. "What did you find?" She hesitated, then spoke. "Search history related to sedative dosages," she said, "particularly in elderly individuals." A cold silence filled the room. Michael went completely still. "And that's not all," she continued. "We also found communications with a private care facility." My breath caught. "What kind of communications? Discussions about expedited evaluation," she said, "in cases involving cognitive decline." My chest tightened painfully. "She was trying to get me admitted," I whispered. Officer Carter didn't confirm it directly, but she didn't deny it either. Michael stared at the wall, his expression hollow. She was planning everything he said quietly. "Yes," I said. And now there was no doubt left, no uncertainty, no denial, just truth. Cold, clear, unavoidable. I looked down at my hands, then back up at Officer Carter. "Will she be arrested?" I asked. Her expression remained steady. "We're building the case," she said, "but she's already under close watch." I nodded slowly, because now I understood something I hadn't fully grasped before. This wasn't just a family crisis. This was a crime. And Ashley, the woman who smiled at dinner, who packed the pie, who called me family, had planned every step of it. But she had made one mistake. She underestimated the smallest voice in the room. And now, everything was unraveling. The call from Officer Carter came just before dawn. I hadn't slept. Not really. I had stayed at the hospital with Noah until they let him rest in a quiet room nearby, curled up under a thin blanket, his small hand still clutching the sleeve of my coat even in sleep. Michael was stable, monitored, awake but exhausted, and Ashley had been allowed to leave the hospital the night before, but not without questions, not without eyes on her. "Susan," Officer Carter said over the phone, her voice calm but urgent, "we need you at your house." My heart tightened instantly. What happened? "She's there," she said. Everything in me went still. Who she replied. "She arrived about 10 minutes ago. We've got units on the way, but we need you present." My grip tightened on the phone. "What is she doing there, trying to get in?" Carter said. "We think she believes there are documents inside." Of course she did. Because there had been. Because she thought she still had access. "I'm coming," I said. I hung up and looked over at Noah. He was still asleep, his face softer than I had seen it in days. For a moment I hesitated. Then I called Carol. She answered groggily but instantly alert when she heard my voice. "I need you to stay with Noah at the hospital," I said. "Something's happening at my house." "I'm on my way," she said without hesitation. The drive felt sharper than the night before, not frantic, not panicked, focused, because now I knew exactly what we were dealing with. And so did she. When I turned onto my street, I saw the police car parked just beyond my driveway, and Ashley's car, right where Carol had said she'd seen it before, waiting, watching. Only now, she wasn't watching anymore. She was acting. I pulled in quickly, stepping out of the car just as Officer Carter approached me. "She's inside the backyard," Carter said quietly. "Trying the back door." My chest tightened. "She still thinks she can get in." Carter nodded. "We wanted you here before we moved in?" I took a slow breath, steadying myself. "I'm ready." We moved together around the side of the house. And there she was, Ashley. Standing at my back door, her shoulders tense, her hands moving quickly as she tried something at the lock. Not knocking, not calling, trying to get in. For a moment, I just stood there watching her. The woman who had smiled across my dinner table. The woman who had called me family. The woman who had tried to poison me. And now, she was breaking into my home. Ashley. My voice cut through the air, sharp, clear. She froze. Slowly she turned, and for a split second I saw it. Not surprise, not guilt, but irritation. Like I had interrupted something important. "Susan," she said, her voice too calm. "No," I said. I stepped forward, my gaze locked on hers. "You don't get to explain this away." Her eyes flicked briefly toward the officers behind me, then back to me. "I was worried," she said quickly. "You weren't answering your phone. I thought something might have happened." "At my back door," I asked. Her expression tightened. "I didn't want to disturb the neighbors," she said. The lie was effortless, seamless. But this time, it didn't work. Officer Carter stepped forward. "Ma'am, step away from the door." Ashley hesitated. Then slowly she stepped back. Her posture changed slightly, less confident, more calculated. "What's going on?" she asked, her tone shifting just enough to sound concerned. "You tell me," Carter replied. Ashley crossed her arms lightly. "I came to check on Susan," she said, "that's all." Carter didn't respond. Instead, she nodded slightly toward another officer who moved closer to Ashley. "You're not authorized to be on this property without permission," Carter said, "and attempting to access a locked residence without consent raises serious concerns." Ashley's jaw tightened. "I wasn't breaking in," she said. "No," Carter asked calmly. Ashley glanced at me, and for a moment the mask slipped. Not completely, but enough. There was something in her eyes now. Something cold, something angry. "You're overreacting," she said, her voice low. "All of this is unnecessary." I felt a slow, steady anger rise in my chest. "Is it?" I asked. She held my gaze. "Yes," she said. "You've misunderstood everything." I took another step forward. "No," I said quietly. "I finally understand everything." The silence that followed was heavy, unavoidable. Ashley's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake," she said. "Am I asked. She exhaled sharply, her composure cracking just a little more. "This doesn't have to be complicated," she said. "You could have made it easy." There it was, that word again. Easy, for who I asked. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "For everyone," she said. I shook my head slowly. "No," I said, "for you." That was the moment everything changed. Because this time, she didn't deny it. She didn't soften her tone. She didn't pretend. Instead, she laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You were supposed to step aside," she said. The words landed like a blow. The officers around us went still. "Your old Susan," she continued, her voice no longer gentle, no longer careful. "You forget things. You struggle. It was only a matter of time." My chest tightened, but I didn't look away. "And my house?" I asked. Her eyes flickered, then settled. "It would have been handled," she said. "Handled, like I was a problem to solve, not a person. And Michael," I pressed. She shrugged slightly. "He was already slipping," she said. "Tired, distracted, easy to guide." A cold silence fell over everything, because now she wasn't hiding it anymore. "And Noah?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. For the first time, something shifted in her expression. Not guilt, not regret, annoyance. "He complicates things," she said. "Too observant, too emotional." My hands clenched at my sides. "He's a child," I said. "He's a liability," she corrected. The words hit harder than anything else she had said, because they weren't just cruel. They were honest. And in that honesty, everything became clear. "You should have just signed the papers," she said. "It would have been simple. You would have been taken care of. And then—" She stopped herself. But it was too late. And then what I asked. She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. Officer Carter stepped forward. "That's enough," she said firmly. "Ma'am, you're going to come with us." Ashley's gaze snapped toward her. "For what she demanded, for questioning," Carter replied. "And based on what we've uncovered so far, potentially more." Ashley looked back at me. For a moment, there was no mask, no performance, just something raw, cold. "You did this," she said. I met her gaze. "No," I replied quietly. "You did." The officers moved in, taking her by the arm. She didn't resist. Not physically, but her eyes stayed on me the entire time. Sharp, unforgiving. As they led her away, I felt something shift inside me. Not relief, not yet, but something close. Because the full, undeniable truth had finally come out, and there was no putting it back. I stood there in my backyard, the morning light just beginning to break across the sky, my hands still at my sides. And for the first time since this began, I knew. She had lost control, completely. The house felt different after that morning, not broken, not violated, but changed. As if something invisible had been lifted, something heavy that had been pressing down on every corner without me realizing it. I stood in the kitchen for a long time after the police cars left my hands resting lightly on the counter, my eyes drifting to the refrigerator, the same refrigerator where the pie had sat, where everything had almost gone wrong. I opened it slowly. The shelf was empty now. Clean, ordinary, but I knew better than to trust appearances anymore. Nothing about the past few days had been ordinary. My phone rang, pulling me back into the present. It was Carol. "Is it over?" she asked. I hesitated. Then I answered honestly. "No," I said, "but it's changed." She exhaled softly. "I'm bringing Noah home," she said. "He's awake. He keeps asking for you." My chest tightened. "I'll be here." When they arrived, Noah ran to me the moment he stepped through the door. I barely had time to close it before his arms wrapped tightly around me. "I thought you left," he said, his voice small against my shoulder. I held him close, my hand gently resting on the back of his head. "I told you," I whispered, "I'm not going anywhere." He nodded, but he didn't let go. Not right away. And I didn't ask him to. Carol stood quietly nearby, watching us with soft eyes. When Noah finally stepped back, I knelt down in front of him, meeting his gaze. "You're safe here," I said gently. "You understand that, right?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Mom won't come back?" he asked. The question was simple, but the answer wasn't. I chose my words carefully. "She won't be able to hurt you," I said. He studied my face as if searching for something deeper than the words. Then slowly he nodded again. That was enough for now. Later that afternoon, I returned to the hospital. Michael was sitting up when I walked in, his face still pale but clearer than before. When he saw me, something shifted in his expression. Relief, guilt, gratitude, all at once. "How is he?" he asked immediately. "He's safe," I said, "with me." Michael closed his eyes briefly, a deep breath leaving his chest. Thank God. I pulled a chair closer to his bed and sat down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. There was too much to say, and no easy way to say it. Finally, he looked at me. "They took her in," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. "Yes." He swallowed hard. I keep replaying everything he admitted. Every conversation, every moment I ignored. I didn't interrupt. He needed to say it. "I thought I was protecting our family," he continued. "Working more, providing more, letting her handle things at home." His voice tightened. But I wasn't protecting anything. The weight of his words settled heavily between us. "You didn't see it," I said gently. "I should have," he replied. I held his gaze. "And what matters now?" I asked. He hesitated. "Then, that I see it now," he said. I nodded, yes, because that was the truth, the only truth that mattered going forward. He leaned back slightly, his eyes drifting toward the window. "Is he angry with me?" he asked quietly. My chest tightened. "No," I said, "he's scared, and he needs you." Michael's jaw tightened. "I don't deserve that," he said. I leaned forward slightly. "Maybe not," I said, "but he still needs you." He looked at me then. Really looked, and for the first time in days, I saw something steady in his eyes. Resolve. "I won't fail him again," he said. I believed him, not because he said it, but because of how he said it. The days that followed were slow, deliberate, careful. Noah stayed with me. At first, he barely left my side. Even simple things like walking from one room to another, he would glance back, making sure I was still there. I let him. I didn't rush him. I didn't push him. Healing doesn't happen on a schedule. It happens in moments. Small ones, quiet ones. Like the first time he laughed again. It was soft, brief, but real. And it felt like something fragile beginning to grow. Michael was released from the hospital 3 days later. He came straight to my house, no hesitation, no discussion, just a quiet understanding that this was where he needed to be. The first time Noah saw him walk through the door, he froze. Just for a second, then he ran. Straight into his father's arms. Michael dropped to his knees, holding him tightly, his shoulders shaking. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." Noah didn't answer. He just held on. And sometimes, that's enough. A week later, we sat together at the kitchen table, the three of us. Not the same family we had been before, but something new, something honest. Noah traced small circles on the table with his finger, his voice quiet. "I thought no one would believe me," he said. My heart tightened. I reached over and took his hand. "I believed you," I said. He looked up at me. "Because of the note?" he asked. I smiled softly. "Because of you." Michael leaned forward slightly. "You can always tell us the truth," he said. "Even if it's scary, especially if it's scary." Noah nodded slowly. "I know." And for the first time, he sounded like he meant it. That night, after they had both gone to bed, I stood alone in the kitchen again. The house was quiet, peaceful. In a way, it hadn't been for a long time. I walked to the drawer by the sink and opened it carefully. Inside, tucked neatly beneath a folded cloth, was the note. I took it out and unfolded it gently. The creases were softer now, the edges worn, but the words were still there, clear, unchanged. "Grandma, please don't eat the pie, and please don't leave me here tonight." I traced the letters with my finger, my chest tightening slightly. This small piece of paper had changed everything, had saved me, had saved him, had exposed the truth that no one else had seen. I folded it carefully and placed it back in the drawer, not hidden, not forgotten, just kept, as a reminder that sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the one you need to listen to most. And this time I had. Spring came quietly that year. I remember noticing it not in a single moment, but in small, gentle shifts. The light staying a little longer in the evenings, the soft green returning to the trees outside my kitchen window, the sound of birds in the early morning that I hadn't realized I had missed. Life didn't suddenly become easy, but it began to feel possible again. Michael and Noah had been living with me for a little over 2 months by then. Not permanently. At least that wasn't how we talked about it. But long enough that the rhythm of the house had changed. Noah's shoes by the door, Michael's coffee cup left on the counter in the mornings, the quiet, steady presence of people who were really trying to rebuild something that had been broken. And for the first time in a long time, the house felt full in the right way. Michael kept his promise, not in big dramatic ways, but in small, consistent ones. He was there when Noah woke up, there when he came home from school, there at the dinner table even on days when I could see the exhaustion still lingering in his eyes. He had taken a leave from work at first, then slowly returned part-time, carefully restructuring his schedule so he wouldn't disappear into it again. "I miss too much already," he told me one evening as we stood side by side in the kitchen. I didn't argue, because he was right. But I also saw the effort. And effort matters. Noah changed too, not all at once. Not in ways that were easy to measure, but in quiet, meaningful ways. At first he slept with the light on, then just a nightlight. Then eventually, darkness. At first he asked where I was every time I left the room. Then only sometimes. Then one day, not at all. The first time he laughed a real full laugh, I had to step out of the room for a moment. Not because I was upset, but because I needed a second to breathe, to let it sink in. He was coming back, slowly, but surely. We had started therapy as well. Michael insisted on it for both of them. And at first, Noah resisted. He didn't want to talk, didn't want to revisit things. But over time, he began to open up. Not everything, not all at once, but enough. Enough for healing to begin. As for me, I found myself changing too, in ways I hadn't expected. I became more aware, more attentive, not fearful but careful. I reviewed every document, every account, every detail of my life that I had once trusted others to handle without question. David helped me restructure everything. My will, my financial access, my medical directives. Everything was clear now, defined, protected. No room for manipulation, no room for assumption. And strangely, That didn't make me feel restricted. It made me feel free. Because for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly where I stood. Ashley's case moved forward, quietly, steadily. I didn't attend every hearing. I didn't need to. I had already heard the truth, seen it, lived it, but I stayed informed. And what came out over time only confirmed what we already knew: the debt. Worse than anyone had realized. The plans, more detailed than I had imagined. The intent, clear, calculated, cold. There were documents, drafts, communications, all pointing to the same conclusion. This hadn't been a moment of weakness. It had been a plan, and it had nearly worked. Nearly. One afternoon, a few months later, Noah came into the kitchen while I was organizing some papers. He stood there quietly for a moment, watching me. "Grandma," he said. I looked up. "Yes, sweetheart?" He hesitated, then asked, "Do you still have the note?" I paused, then nodded. "I do. Can I see it?" I studied his face for a moment. There was no fear there, no anxiety, just curiosity and something else, understanding. I opened the drawer by the sink and took it out carefully, unfolding it the same way I always did. I handed it to him. He looked at it for a long moment, at his own handwriting, the shaky letters, the rushed words. "You kept it," he said. "Of course I did," I replied. He looked up at me, why I smiled softly. "Because it reminded me to listen," I said. "To what? To you," I said. His expression shifted slightly. "You always listened," he said. I shook my head gently. "Not always," I admitted, "but I do now." He folded the note carefully and handed it back to me. "Me too," he said. I placed it back in the drawer, but not before smoothing it out one more time. Not as a memory of fear, but as a symbol of something else: courage. That evening, we sat together on the back porch. The air was warm, quiet, peaceful. Michael leaned back in his chair, watching Noah chase something across the yard. A butterfly, I think. I almost lost everything he said quietly. I didn't respond right away, because I knew what he meant. Not just his health, not just his home, his family, his son, his sense of reality. All of us did, I said, finally. He nodded. "I don't know how I didn't see it," he admitted. I looked out at Noah, laughing as he ran. Sometimes I said, "It's not about what you see." He glanced at me. "What do you mean it's about what you're willing to question?" I said. He was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I won't make that mistake again." I believed him, because this time, he had learned it the hard way. Later that night, after the house had settled into its familiar rhythm, I sat alone in the living room. The same place where everything had started to change. The same place where I had first read that note. I thought about how close it had all come, how easily things could have gone differently. One slice of pie, one moment of trust, one missed warning, and everything could have been lost. But it wasn't. Because of a small hand, a quiet voice, and a piece of paper that carried more truth than anything else in that house. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence settle around me. Not empty, not lonely, but full. Full of everything we had survived. Full of everything we were still building, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something simple, something steady. Peace. Sometimes the most important truths don't come from loud voices. They come from the quiet ones, the ones we almost overlook, the ones we assume are too small, too young, or too uncertain to understand what's really happening. But they see more than we think. They feel more than we realize. And sometimes, they are the only ones brave enough to tell the truth when everyone else is too comfortable believing a lie. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's this: never ignore a child's fear, not when it's quiet, not when it's inconvenient, not when it challenges what you think you know. Because real fear, doesn't appear without reason, and trust, real trust, means listening even when the truth is uncomfortable. It also taught me something else. Control doesn't always look like anger. Manipulation doesn't always look like cruelty. Sometimes it looks like kindness, like organization, like someone helping you. And that's what makes it dangerous. So ask yourself, Have you ever ignored a small warning because it felt easier to believe everything was fine? Have you ever trusted someone without questioning what they were asking in return? I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? And if this story stayed with you, if it made you feel something or reminded you of someone, don't forget to subscribe, and share your perspective in the comments. Because sometimes the story someone else tells is the one that helps you see your own more clearly.